Hey guys, and welcome back to This Week on the Challenge with me, Adrian. I've really missed talking to you guys in the comments after watching the episodes. I've been really stressed out with work for the past 2 weeks. Things have been really busy, so I just decided to take it easy and watch the episodes myself. But I'm really excited to be back and recapping this episode 14 of Total Madness with you guys today, so let's go. So in the first little part of this episode, nothing crazy goes on, except a majority of it is just all the guys in the house really shitting on Aneesa. It's not just one or two guys talking crap about her, but it seems to be a consensus among all the guys that no one wants to run the final with her. I mean, there is a potential in the final that they're paired up with a guy-girl pair to run one leg of the final, and none of them seem to be confident in having Aneesa as a partner. And so it sounds like even though Aneesa already has her red skull, if they get the chance to throw her into elimination, it sounds like they're going to take that chance. But in the bunker, so close to around the time everyone's going to bed, I don't know what time that is, 10, 11 p.m., 12 a.m., the lights in the bunker go off, indicating that a challenge is about to begin. So everyone is hyped because they are about to sleep. They don't know what's about to happen except that they are being called down to a challenge. So they all run out and meet TJ, and indeed it is time for the challenge of the week. This week it's called Running Out of Time, and they basically start at the starting line. They run over to a pile of cinder blocks, steel balls, I don't know, just a bunch of heavy material. They all have to run back and put some of this weight into one of the housemates' buckets. TJ is then going to blow the whistle, and they have 5 minutes to run back to the starting line wherever they are. Whoever doesn't make it to the starting line is eliminated right away, but whoever gets through then goes into this competition of who can lift the bucket up for the longest time. As TJ says, this is a classic screw your enemy game because whoever has the lightest bucket is obviously going to win. So you're gonna put the heaviest weights into the person who you don't want to win. TJ also says that this is going to be a double elimination, so one man and one woman is going to earn the red skull, and one man and one woman is going to be sent home. So it's very exciting this week. There's a lot at stake because a lot of these players now have their red skulls. Someone with a red skull could be sent home this week, and so everyone has to play hard. The challenge then begins, and right off the bat, the bros, Corey, Nelson, and Fessy work together, and they say they're going to fill Kyle's bucket first, followed by Rogan and Bananas. And so you can see as they're stacking all of their weight in the buckets, Kyle's is filled so quickly, and it's so clear that they're targeting him, followed by Rogan's bucket and then Bananas. And on the girl side, you know, there wasn't a lot of discussion, at least not what we saw on air, but it definitely was clear that everyone was targeting Aneesa because her bucket was like filled to the brim, like it was so heavy. But TJ ends up blowing the whistle, indicating that there's 5 minutes left in this challenge. Unfortunately, Nelson, Kyle, and Aneesa don't make it back to the starting line, so they don't even get to move on to that second portion of the challenge where they then have to lift the buckets. But honestly, looking at how full Kyle and Aneesa's buckets were, I don't even know if they would have been able to lift it for 1 second because it looked so heavy, like it was overflowing with material. So they don't even stand a chance, really. So the next part of the challenge begins where they have to lift the buckets and see who can last the longest. People start to drop right away because of the weight in their buckets. On the girls' end, it comes down to Melissa versus Jenny, but Melissa has weight in her bucket and Jenny really seems to have none. And so Melissa drops, and right there and then Jenny wins for the girls. But on the guys' side, it ends up being 3 people who are left. So Fessy, Corey, and Josh. And Josh seems to have quite a lot more weight than both Corey and Fessy, and so he tries to cut a deal with Fessy, saying that if he drops the bucket now, he wants Fessy to choose him to be in the tribunal because Josh doesn't have his red skull. He really wants the opportunity to go in, and that's either going to be through the house vote or being in the tribunal. Josh actually does agree to this, and Fessy as well, and so Josh drops. And then next comes Corey, who is Fessy's like one of his really close friends in the house, and Corey also cuts a deal with Fessy, saying that if he drops, he wants to be in that tribunal to keep himself safe, and Fessy agrees. He cuts the deal, and Corey drops, and Fessy wins. But obviously there's a huge problem here because he has made a deal with both Corey and Josh to take that 3rd place in the tribunal, and there's only one spot, so obviously only one person can take that spot. So he's in a little bit of a pickle here. But after talking to Jenny doesn't even agree with putting Corey into the tribunal because she wants to give it to someone who doesn't have a red skull. So that's either gonna be Josh or Kyle on the guy's side. Fessy and Corey are super close, and so he obviously wants to protect Corey and not, you know, potentially have him go into the elimination. So they didn't really come to a decision, but TJ ended up asking Jenny what their decision was, and Jenny said that Josh was going to be the third person in the tribunal, which I was a little bit surprised by, because in instances like this, like, we haven't really seen it in previous weeks because everyone seems to agree. But let's say the people who make up the tribunal can't agree on who that third person would be. Like, why does one person get to pick? Like, it seems kind of unfair. But anyway, Jenny does pick Josh to make up the third person in the tribunal. So we're now back in the house. Corey is kind of mad. I mean, not mad, but he's annoyed with Fessy, and I totally get it. I mean, I don't think Fessy could have, I don't know. I think Fessy could have fought a little bit harder, but it does seem like his personality to not really be confrontational and not really be like super aggressive. I mean, I watched him on Big Brother. He was such a easily manipulated person in that house. Corey really wanted Fessy to fight more for him to be in the tribunal, and he's mad that he didn't do so. I mean, he knows he can't be mad because technically Jenny did choose Josh, but I think he just felt that Fessy didn't fight enough for him. But next we get to nominations. On the guy's side, Kyle nominates himself, and obviously every other guy in the house has their red skull, and so nobody else wants to go in, so Kyle automatically gets the easy vote. On the girl side is the same story. Bailey is the only female in here with no red skull yet, and so everyone votes for Bailey, and she's going into elimination. We also see a little bit more of Fessy telling Melissa about how the guys don't want to run the final with Aneesa, and kind of seeing her as a possible liability in the final. And we also see them go to the bar, except nothing really interesting happens in this bar scene, so we're gonna skip that. But then we get to tribunal, where Josh, Fessy, and Jenny have to pick 2 guys and 2 girls to interrogate to potentially send down into elimination. So on the guys' side, they pick Rogan and Nelson, and then for the girls, they end up picking Melissa and Aneesa. So when they interrogate Rogan and Nelson, you know, it doesn't really matter because Josh wants to go in as well to get his red skull, so there's no real threat here. But on the girls' side, they do actually have to pick one of these girls to go in against Bailey. For Melissa, Josh and Fessy aren't super close with her. They don't necessarily have ties to her, but for when they're interrogating Aneesa, they do bring up the fact that all the guys in the house are worried about running the final with her, and understandably she's super frustrated because she is one of the people in the house that has been on the challenge the longest. She's just really frustrated that they've begun to count her out even though the final hasn't even happened. Like, she's come really close to getting to the final in the past few challenges, but she's never actually made it. And so this season, the fact that she's earned her red skull and really thought that she was going to make it to that final, she's obviously really mad and really frustrated that all these guys are starting to doubt her and are potentially going to send her into the elimination again. Now we get to Purgatory, and for the girls' vote, Fessy ends up voting in Melissa because he's closer to Aneesa, so he says he can't say her name. Jenny votes for Aneesa, and so it really comes down to Josh, who talks about how, you know, he may not want to run the final with Aneesa. She might be a liability, and so he ends up voting for Aneesa. And so Aneesa, poor girl, has to go down into the elimination versus Bailey, even though she already has her red skull. And on the guy's side, nobody obviously wants to go in, so it's very easy because it's Kyle versus Josh in this elimination. Then we get to the elimination, which is called Knots of War, which they've already played earlier this season with JNCT with the rope. But the basic idea is that they are given this huge pile of rope, and they basically have to go in and out of the car and create as many knots as they can, knots and ties with this rope, so that it makes it really difficult for the other person to untangle your knots. Each person has 15 minutes to create as many knots as they can before swapping and untangling the other person's knots. First person to untangle everything and get that whole pile of rope outside the circle wins the elimination. So the women end up going first, And based on, you know, the housemates commentary, it looks like Aneesa's doing pretty well, being able to pick up the rope really quickly, whereas Bailey's struggling with picking up the rope, which is actually really heavy and it's really long. But it does sound like she's having a little bit of trouble maneuvering. And when they swapped, it sounded like Aneesa was doing pretty well, but actually it ended up Bailey winning this elimination and eliminating Aneesa, which is quite sad. I mean, Aneesa was really disappointed in the end to go home because she was so close to the final. I do actually feel really bad that Aneesa was eliminated so close to the final because she has really worked so hard this season to get herself a red skull to make it to that final. So for that, I mean, I hope she gets a chance to come back next season and make her way into the final. I do think Aneesa in 2020 is not as strong as she was 10 years ago when she was on the challenge, but you know, let her come back next season, let her get into that final, and let's see how well she performs today, because she can either shut people up with how well she's going to do in that final, or she's going to prove that maybe she's just not as fit to run the final anymore. But I do hope we get to see her in a final soon. Next is the men's round, so Kyle versus Josh. And right off the bat, it looks like Kyle has a really good rhythm going in and out of the car, weaving his knots throughout it, and just making really good progress. And it seems like it's taking Josh a little bit of time to figure out, you know, getting into the rhythm, but it does also look like he does get into his groove of creating knots in his car, going in and out. Once they start untangling, I mean, I was elated and cheering so hard when Kyle finally picked up all his rope and put it out of the circle and won the challenge, because when they panned over to Josh's car, I mean, his was still full of knots and there was so much rope around, but I was so happy for Kyle to win this elimination because it meant that Josh was going home. And see ya, Josh. We don't miss you. We don't want to see you back in the challenge. At least I don't. I mean, I think he's such a cocky player and has, you know, not really proven himself in the history of the challenge yet, but he talks a big game for someone who hasn't done very much. So I don't like Josh as a player. I'm probably more excited that he's going home than Kyle winning this elimination, but I am happy that Kyle won this elimination. And so just like that, Bailey and Kyle both get their red skulls, and unfortunately Aneesa and fortunately Josh does get sent home. The remaining challengers are really anxious to see what TJ's going to say, because at this point everyone in the house has a red skull, and so the next week could be a final right away, but TJ does not give them any clues and simply says, see you guys next week. But we do see in the trailer afterward that it looks like it is another week of elimination, so it doesn't look like next week is the final yet. It seems like there's going to be more people on the chopping board before they finally get to the finals. But I am beyond excited to see what sort of hell the challenge producers have created this season. It seems like they're in a really cold climate, so I mean, there's probably gonna be more of them like running up a mountain, being pulled by like snow dogs or something again. But yeah, I think it's going to be really intense. I think the remaining competitors we have in the house now are all really fit physically, so I think it's going to be a really, really good finale to watch. But let me know your thoughts on the episode, what you thought of this double elimination, which I thought was actually quite exciting. And maybe who else you think might get eliminated next week. Maybe one guy, one girl. But yeah, let me know your thoughts overall. Are you happy that Josh has finally gone home? Because I'm so happy. But yeah, see you guys next week when we watch the challenge. Bye.